Welcome to the Canny Conversations podcast. Conversations with a cause, with social entrepreneur Safaraz Ali.
Hello and welcome once again to Canny Conversations with a Cause. Conversations that we hope you will captivate your curiosity cannily. And I'm glad I've got that out, Saf. How are you?
Good, thank you. Very good.
Let's just update anybody who listened to the last episode. Saf is here, so he did manage to get some fuel. It was touch and go. And unfortunately, the garage was down a hill rather than up a hill. But he managed to get some fuel and he managed to get home. And he's here with us today.
And thank you so much for driving behind me and just making sure that I got to the petrol station in time.
On the way to the garage, we drove behind Saf so that if he broke down, we could go past and wave. This episode is going to talk about the importance of building a business on solid foundations. And we're also going to touch on the value that partnerships can bring to any business. So to begin with, Saf, what are the ingredients that make for a solid foundation within any business? I've got a quote here from you, which you've used many times, and that is, if you don't have customers, then you don't have a business. So I guess customers are part of it, but talk me through what solid foundations look like.
But that quotation referred mainly to when I was talking about branding and those new sort of entrepreneurs, and they focus a lot on marketing and particularly branding and getting the name out there. And what you find is that the business owner or the entrepreneur is so focused on the branding element of it rather than customer acquisition that they forget the fact that for us to have a business, to survive, we've got to go and get customers and be able to service those customers and obviously look at making a return, a profit from that. But they overly obsess on the branding element of it and getting the brand out there. And this is why I use that line, and I've used it a few times, is that, you don't have a business if you don't have any customers. You focus on customer acquisition. Go and get your first customers. Focus on first 3 customers as an example. Who are they? What are they doing? And why you should be their supplier, or why they should buy from you. And that puts it into context, because sometimes we overcomplicate things and we start talking about funnels and this, that and other, and marketing and positioning and strategic alliances. All of these sort of things came in. I think for me, these come afterwards. You've got to have your first couple of customers, and you've got to go out and get and identify, service those, make sure that your product or service works, it meets the need. How does that compare with others? And then from there, you're in a position then to start looking at the growth plans, and you can start then looking at positioning and so forth. But it really is, from my perspective, what the basics are is getting your first customers who are prepared to buy from you and who are prepared to pay. Not the people that you're sort of trying to bring on as to sell for you. I'm not talking about supply chains. I'm not talking about that. But who are your first customers that were actually going to pay you a dime, pay you some money, pay you for your services?
So you've identified the importance of customers, which
it's very basic, but very very basic.
It's very basic, but most of the good things are what are very basic, aren't they? In terms of developing a product or service, so in order to have customers, to what extent? The old-fashioned view, is you develop your product and your service, and then you go out and you try to find customers. To what extent do you think that the customers or the potential customers or the people that you want to be customers need to be involved in the development of the product or service? Because we still see it, don't we? A lot of, in the technical and the innovation field, people who are brilliant technicians and brilliant inventors, they invent something which is superb and fiendishly clever, but nobody wants it, or there's no need for it. So talk me through this process of developing the service or the product that the customer needs, because people buy solutions to problems, don't they?
Yeah, and then there's another thing as well, just to add to that. Everybody feels that they need to have a USP, a unique selling point, or a differentiator. And that's not necessarily the case. You don't need to have a unique selling point. What you can do is the product or service that you've got, just be better at it. It doesn't have to be unique. You don't have to be inventive all the time. And there's many businesses that are going into markets where there's a market there already. As an example, fostering. We went into the foster care business. That's not innovation. We're not, creating something which is new. There's a market there already. We as a business have gone into that. There's nothing wrong with it. We know where the demographics are. We can get all the information in terms of where the local authorities are looking at, what the plans are. We can get the data behind it. We can then make judgments based on that. We can then do a business plan. We can then look at how we're going to market slightly differently from others, or how we're going to differentiate our brand. But the product and the service predominantly is the same. There's regulation involved. There's certain things that are must-haves, and you're in a position where you can plan that and you can do that. So it's not always about sitting there and thinking of new ideas, inventions, and often that predominantly on TV, Dragon's Den I'm referring to, or Shark Tank or so forth. These sort of programs where people come up with inventions, and you've got the inventor who is obsessed with the product itself. They're obsessed with getting perfection, and they're obsessed with getting the best possible product, but not necessarily thinking, is this what the market needs? What problem am I solving? And why the customer should buy, and is this something that people are prepared to pay for it? So you're making that sort of element where you're obsessing over the wrong thing. You're making a lot of assumptions. You're making a lot of generalization, and you think you know it all. And what you find is that is high risk. That's not only high risk for that individual, but high risk for anybody that gets involved. And there's many businesses out there where you've got data, you've got products that are out there already. You can try and launch in that marketplace, and you don't have to go in there and make assumptions that you're going to have 1% of the market or any of these slightly silly sort of broad assumptions. But it's having a plan that works in line with your efforts, really, rather than this is how big the market is and I want to dominate. So it's a long sort of answer.
It's a long and a complex question. I mean, so many times in my life I've been dealing, and I say this particularly with technological companies who basically come up with something and they explain it to you, and you realise that what you've actually got is a solution looking for a problem. And
I like that, actually.
But you do. They've developed something which is fiendishly clever, but they've got to find a use for it. I mean, we're talking about foundations for businesses here, and we've been spending a little bit of time talking about the importance of customer acquisition. And before we move on from customer acquisition, the other thing that I wanted to talk about as part and parcel of that is customer retention. Because there's a marketing cliche, and whether it's exactly true or not, I'm not sure, but that it costs 8 times as much to win a new customer as it does to retain an existing one. So presumably, Saf, it's not just about customer acquisition, but it's about customer retention.
I had a business coach sort of 6-7 years ago now that used to say there's only 3 things you can do. You can get your customer to buy from you, you can get them to buy more, or you can get them to buy more often. So buy more often. Only three things. And we used to have a window of opportunity. And is your customer aware of all your products? And if they're not, what products are they buying currently? And are they aware of all your products? So we had this element of customer A and all our products or services. So customer A is buying product A, but they're not buying product B, C, or D, but are they aware of B, C, and D? And if they're not aware of B, C, and D, then we need to make them aware of B, C, and D. So it's not just about retention, but it's also the maximization of it. So get your customer to buy first. Hopefully, you service the customer. You're looking after their needs. Then you get them to buy more often, or you get them to buy more. So frequency of it, or your other services. So this is a whole sort of customer pull that we can look at. But you're absolutely right. The lifeblood of every business, and it's important to remind ourselves that it's about fulfilling their needs. Don't treat anybody with the assumption, the fact that they're there forever. And I think, we can't make those assumptions. We've got to be in a position where, we keep a grip of the service that we're offering. We don't want to be in a position where we're resting on our laurels, and we're in a position where we're continuously improving. And sometimes it's those small improvements regularly. And a bugbear that I have is there's certain markets, and the insurance market being one. I mean, as you know, is from the financial services sector. So the insurance market is being one where the a renewal policy comes in, and what they do is they treat the existing customer slightly worse than potentially a new customer. So they focus on customer acquisition, they focus on getting the customer in, and the price for the new customer is lowered, and the renewal prices are increased to subsidize the new customer. And if you look at what the existing customers, as long as they feel that they're looked after, will be customers for life. And the lifetime value of that customer is lost, because there will be some customers where the prices have been increased. If they even go back to the same company and they're offering lower prices, you're alienating those customers and alienating that customer. So this customer service element of it, absolutely vital. And you find that rather than adding more value, and it's not always about the price, if they can add additional value, try and get their customers to buy more, what you'll find is customers will become hopefully raving fans, this thing that we've talked about before, but they'll also become big sort of supporters. And this is where I think the real value is. It's not in terms of the initial sell, but it's about keeping that customer and being in a position where you can get more from them, and hopefully get them to utilize word of mouth and get you more business.
I mean, you do raise an interesting point about insurance, and I know that financial services is a sector that you've worked in previously. Just to remind our listener that we're talking listeners, plural, is that we're talking at the fag end of 2021, and there is actually legislation that comes in the early part of 2022 that will stop this business of treating new customers better than existing customers, and I think that's highly welcome. Let's just talk about the business of some of the other components of the solid foundations of a business. You tell me if you agree with this, Saf. Somebody once said to me that you can think of a business as a three-cornered stool. And three legs in the shape of a triangle is allegedly the most stable configuration. And I was told that the three key components of any business are the product and service, which is what we've just talked about, the marketing and sales, and the managing of the money. Is that an oversimplification, do you think? And the one thing that's obviously missing from that, I would have thought, are the people. But I know you're very much into the value of people. So just talk about some of the other foundations of a business.
Just on picking on those points, because I think it's worth having a quick conversation on them. I think your second point was about marketing and telling the customer about it. And I think this, we have discussed this before about the marketing angle of it. I think, there's two parts there. There's visibility and credibility. And, whether you're talking on a personal level or whether you're talking on a business level, you've got to be visible. You've got to go out and market, and marketing is different to sales, but you've got to go out there and market your services. But the product, it needs to be credible as well. And this credibility is absolutely vital in terms of the value that it gives, the specification that it has, the product specification or the service specification, the value that you have, the capability, and the results that come out of it. And I think from my perspective, if you look at, we live in a review economy, you offer a bad service or a bad product, that word of mouth goes very, very quickly. And what you find is that you're not going to get very far if your reviews of your core product or service aren't there. So that may be the customer service element of it. That may be the actual core product or service. And I think that is often now a key ingredient in most businesses in terms of what the customers think. Are you actually adding value, and what the perception of that product is? It's not necessarily about price. It's not about other factors that come into it. It's really about what the customer feels in terms of this value, this word value. Is it valued? Is it fit for purpose? Is this what they expected? And when things aren't to expectation, that's where disappointment comes in. And then this is where the bad reviews come in. So is it what they expected? Does it say what is on the tin or whatever was promised? And it's that false promise that really then kills the reputation of that business. So this reputation of that business then depends really on those key ingredients. But that's again, basic sort of stuff of generalization. But what you find is that even these sort of things, we get carried away on a particular focus, and we think, if we can create the best product out there, the customers will roll up. It doesn't happen. Or we think the fact that we can lower the product specification and the customers won't complain. All of these things are big assumptions that are made, and it's often getting that balance right. And you don't have to have the best product out there, but what you do need is make sure the fact that the customer's expectations are met, and whatever that is, whatever your brand promise is, whatever your value that you've said, you meet to that value. You've identified it. You've identified the customer that you're going to meet and you're aiming for, and you do that. And again, it's easy stuff, but it's hard sometimes to balance all that out and get that right. And often we are pulled, there's push and pull factors. We are pulled because sometimes we can't get the right level of staff. The staff competencies aren't there. Their capability isn't there. We find the fact that the skills and there's knowledge gaps. So there's gaps. And, when these gaps happen, then what you find is that then there's gaps in service, then there's gaps in terms of the expectation. And it's really, how much of that tolerance is there, and what level of tolerance is the customer willing to accept? Because you've got to reach a certain level of tolerance for somebody to even complain. I'm not talking about the people out there who, complain for a living, and there are some people who do that. But we've got to have to a certain level of tolerance, and when we past that level of tolerance is when we start, writing out emails or going onto the views, and really that whatever that tolerance is.
Yeah, you used a word. The word you used was integrity, which is a good word. I'm going to use another word, which is, because I'm a simple man, I'm going to use the word trust. And I think trust is key in any relationship, in any business relationship. And, I'm sure you and our listeners can have many examples of where they've stopped using a supplier because they no longer trust them. I mean, in my particular case, no names, no pack drill, but for more than a decade, I used to go to a garage who used to look after my cars, and suddenly everything started to become quite expensive. And you'd take the car in and they'd say, "Oh, you need a new fuse, sir." And then you'd get a call a day later saying, "Actually, it's not a fuse. You need a new fuse box, and we can get a fuse box aftermarket." And then you get a call saying, "We can't do that." And I don't know whether I was being ripped off or not, but I do know that I reached a point where I started to lose trust. And I think the other thing about, a business is all businesses, things go wrong in all businesses. And it's not the fact that things that go wrong that's the problem. It's the fact that it's how that problem is dealt with. I mean, I purchased something recently, which a piece of equipment that broke down. And I was annoyed that it broke down, but actually I was very, very pleased with the way that the business dealt with it, in terms of they responded to my complaint quickly, they replaced the piece of kit, and I actually feel I could recommend them. So in terms of building and retaining trust, it takes a time to earn trust, doesn't it, Saf? But when that trust goes, it's almost impossible to restore, or is it, do you think?
I think just on a couple of those things. I mean, the example that you gave about the garage and so forth. You have businesses where, talk about customer being king or customer being one. In those particular cases, the customer is lost in the process. So, talk about putting customers first and customer being number one, and your objective is there to serve. Clearly that isn't happening. So, are they putting the customer first? If they were, then they would be acting in the best interest of the customer. I come from a background, again, financial services, which I don't want to keep going on about banks and financial services, but there's been many occasions where they've not acted in the best interest of the customer. So this is where the mis-selling has happened, the mis-selling scandals. I was involved in the pensions review mis-selling, the with-profit endowment policies that were sold, the mortgage mis-selling, and many, many policies where they were mis-sold, where they weren't acting in the best interest of the customer, and customers weren't put first. The bank targets were put first. The culture was created where it wasn't about customer first. It wasn't about putting the customer at the top of what the business is about. And whenever you think about customer service and customer satisfaction, everybody now thinks about Amazon because they are obsessed about the customer. And I think Amazon is probably one of the forerunners into this in terms of their obsession with getting it right for the customer, servicing, looking at the improvements, the one-click element that comes in, and how that business, unlike possibly a lot of other businesses, now I think we're all following sort of the Amazon model in our own way, but that obsession is there, and I think that's the way it is now at the moment, where customer service, customer experience is a business in itself. The whole customer experience officer roles, I've not seen that. 20 years ago, there was no customer experience officer. There were complaints, people who deal with complaints, but it wasn't about customer experience or customer satisfaction or the implementation of it and ensuring that was there. And if you're working in a customer service department, really that was a complaints department. That was about putting things right. I fully agree with you. If you can deal with somebody's problem and you can deal with that adequately and you can deal with that with little fuss, then what you find is that individual who has got an issue with your product or service actually becomes very supportive. Not only have you retained the customer, but you've got somebody who will then, through word of mouth, actually potentially give you more customers. And that's a big thing for businesses. If they can get somebody who has complained, where you've passed that threshold, and you can satisfy that need, and you can satisfy it in a way where it's resolvable, then not only is the customer retained, but you're likely to get more business out of that, because they will no doubt they will tell others.
I mean, you made a very good point, and we were talking about solid foundations for a business. And
I think we're losing track, aren't we?
I thought when we started this conversation, Sal, we'd cover up a series of things, but we've focused on the customer, and maybe that's the right thing to do. The customer should be left, right, and centre of a business, and maybe that is the key foundation. Before we finish, I just want to ask you one thing, though. It was once said to me that sometimes actually it's a good thing to sack a bad customer. And I think what that referred to is sometimes, and we've all perhaps been in that situation, you'll get somebody, you referred to the serial complainer earlier on. Sometimes you can get a bad customer, somebody who's always having a moan, who's got unrealistic expectations, who's a bit tardy when it comes to paying the bills and all the rest of it. So have you ever sacked a customer?
I think we've gone through that a few times, and it's happened to me as well, to be frank with you, where we used to use an accounting service, and they turned around and said, well, we've been acquired by somebody else, we've had to reflect on our customers, and unfortunately we're having to say goodbye to you. And you get quite upset about that. You're thinking, why are they saying no to me? Why do we have to go somewhere else? But that has happened. And what you find is that it doesn't meet either their profitability or the level of service we used to get from them. They no longer want to offer that. So I think first, if a business can categorize their customers in terms of the customer lifetime value, and really be in a position where you can look at your customers and look at the added value that you can give. And a lot of this is about the value that you feel that you can give, because you may get to a point where a business has grown naturally and you're now getting inbound inquiries and you're taking business on, and it's grown into a slightly different way, and you may not have either the expertise, the time to actually service your customers. So naturally, if you can categorize what sort of customers, what's your ideal customer, what does that look like, what sort of customers you enjoy offering, where you can feel that this is above and beyond, it's a remarkable, praiseworthy service, and it's getting to that level where it can be praiseworthy, because sometimes not all of your service is remarkable or praiseworthy, then you can categorize customers into A, B, C, D category, and maybe you could say, well, actually, we let go of D because firstly, they're not bringing the revenue for us. We're not getting profit that comes out of this, and secondly, really, it's affecting us offering a higher level of service to these customers, which is what we want to focus on, because that's where our specialism is, or that's where our niche is, or that's what we want to be known for, or these customers get us more value, and we've got more chance of actually servicing those. There will be, in no doubt, in any business, some customers that you could afford at times to lose, and it's not a bad thing, but it's a conscious thing, as opposed to the customer walking away. You can decide which customers you want to attract and which customers isn't for you. And I think the best businesses that I've seen are the ones where they decide on their customers. It's a two-way thing. It's not a case of somebody just wants to buy a service from you and you can say, well, actually, we're here and we're at your beck and call. It needs to be a two-way thing for you to understand that you can service that customer to a high level that will not only fulfill the customer's expectation, but but fits in with what your business plans and goals are.
I'm sure that's right. We value our customers enormously, and our customers are our listeners, and we hope that we add value, don't we? I'm sure.
There was a hesitation there.
No. I hope that we add value. Somebody once said to me, value complaints, because most people don't complain, they just walk, and move, not complaints, but we value feedback from people. If our listeners feel inclined to like and share, then that's great.
Or review even. Give us a review.
And give us a review. Yeah, let us know what they think.
Yeah.
We're going to curtail this canny conversation with a cause, but we will be back soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this canny conversation with a cause. These conversations are based upon the Canny Bites books by Safaraz Ali, available on Amazon. To find out more, go online and visit Saf's website, pathwaygroup.co.uk, or join him on social media. He can be contacted at safraz@pathwaygroup.co.uk.